the sad fact that in Canada, 30% of the people in our jails are First Nations origin, where they only make up 4 to 5% of the population. We explain that by saying that these poor people genetically are susceptible to addiction. So it's either we make it into a disease or we make it into a choice. Neither is true. It's not a choice. Nobody ever chooses to be an addict, nor is it something that's inherited. We know, for example, that even people that do inherit some genes that are predisposed to addictions, if they're brought up in proper environments, they have no more risk of addiction than anybody else. So it's not ever the genes that cause the addictions, and nobody ever chooses the addiction. What actually happens is when people are traumatized, that increases their risk of addiction. And if you want to know why the First Nations population in this country, it's because they're the most traumatized segment of the Canadian population. Historically, I don't suppose I have to tell you about that, but the fact that in the prairie provinces, I'm not sure what the percentage are in Alberta, but I know in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, I know the percentage is high. I don't know how high it is in Alberta, but most of the kids in care are First Nations origin. This is in a population that knew how to look after their kids beautifully. That if you look at the parenting practices of First Nations peoples across the world, they're actually superior to those of industrial societies according to all the research, unless they're traumatized, in which case the trauma is passed on from one generation to the next. So when it comes to addiction then, what we're looking at is the impact of childhood trauma. Why? Because number one, let's just define an addiction. An addiction is any behavior, substance related or not, that an individual pursues because they find pleasure, relief, or they crave it temporarily, so they pursue it for the pleasure and the relief despite negative consequences, and they don't give it up in the face of negative consequences. I said any behavior, so that could be sex, gambling, eating, shopping, work, relationships, or substances. And if you ask yourself, by that definition, have you ever had an addictive pattern in your life? If you're like most of the people I speak with, if I ask that question, many of you would put your hand up. By that definition, if you've ever had an addictive behavior. And then if you ask yourself, but what did that behavior give me? What did I like about it? Well, you'll tell yourself, it relieves stress. So when I'm very stressed, I go home and I eat a lot. Or I turn on the TV and I just veg out. Or I do drugs.